Well, we start off with the Good Friday spell by Wagner from Parsifal. And in a sense, Good Friday was the initial impulse for Parsifal in general. There are conflicting stories even from Wagner himself about how he conceived Parsifal, but one of the earliest stories from him is that he was at the Wesendonck house near Zurich, and he woke up on Good Friday and he conceived of this drama and some of the music, and he wrote down feverishly some notes for himself. And then 27 years later, he completed Parsifal, having done a lot of things in between. But on that day, the germ, the seed of the idea was sown. But that may also be an apocryphal story, you never know. I mean, he changed it throughout his life. But definitely the idea of Good Friday is core to the opera, and this music is sensationally beautiful music. I mean, it's taken often outside of the context of the opera. And anybody who comes to the concert will hear why. It's got ravishingly beautiful harmonies. He's a man who, when he constructs these sort of still, timeless pieces of music, he's actually doing an awful lot with harmony all the time, very little with melody. There's a lovely tune, in inverted commas, in the middle from the oboe and the clarinet, and towards the end there's some motifs from the strings. But essentially it's a journey in harmony, and almost an orgy of harmony right from the very beginning, in a beautiful E major starting off, and then a series of suspensions which make anybody who loves sound, whether you come from the classical world or any other world, it makes your heart start to beat, because these suspensions are a physical thing. You know, they're part of the physical world, and you can't avoid feeling special when you hear them. So anyway, this music is the seed of Parsifal, and it's a wonderful experience and a wonderful start to the concert. And we then lead on to Wagner's eternal influence throughout the ages. You know, he's still influencing people now. When the Ring finishes, it's not clear whether Alberich, one of the baddies in the Ring, is dead or not. And Christopher Rouse, the American composer, had the wonderful idea of continuing the story. He said, okay, let's see what could have happened to Alberich after the end of the Ring. And so what you hear to start off the percussion concerto is the end of the Ring, the last chords of the Ring. And they finish off this wonderful G-flat major. And then the double basses, 8 of them, they hold over a weird, obscure, ugly chord. And the percussionist makes his entry on a güiro, the South American instrument, which is like a washing board, and he goes, and that's the breathing of Alberich. So we think he's died. We don't know what's happened. The opera's finished, the trilogy is finished, and now we continue. And then over 3 incredible movements, we follow the exploits of Alberich and how he continues. And it follows the normal scheme of concertos, of fast, slow, fast. So there's the first movement of fast, second movement slow, third movement fast. And all the way through, there are quotes from Wagner, ideas that Rouse has brought into it, and this amazing central character of Alberich off on these adventures. And it's the first time I'm doing the piece. It was recommended to me very highly by Colin Currie, our wonderful soloist, a few years ago. And when we were in discussion here about the program, Andrew Bennett and I were talking about Easter, about spring, and we had a few ideas, and then suddenly it came together. We thought, the Wagner with the Wagner opening for the Good Friday, this incredible piece, and I think it's the first time that Rouse is being performed by this orchestra. So I think for everybody it's a great joy and a delight. The main work of the second half is a wonderful tone poem by the English composer Frank Bridge, who is unfortunately still sometimes best known for being the teacher of Benjamin Britten, who is also on the program, but just before. And in fact, Bridge was an incredibly fine composer in his own right. He wrote several great orchestral works, The Sea, for example, or this work, Enter Spring, and a lot of great chamber music. When I was a cellist, I used to perform his cello sonata. I loved it, and I have to admit that was back then my only connection to him was through the cello sonata. But when I came to learn Enter Spring and study it, I discovered the same language there. He's a very interesting mix of languages. There's part of him comes from the German school, part of him comes from the French school, and yet he's deeply English. The way he moves or doesn't move through harmonies, some of the chords he chooses, very typically English. Also some of the time, the way he uses time, the time signature, the meter, I find reminds me of, again, Britten, who he taught, and I'm sure there's a reason for that. But some of the other British composers of the period. So he's deeply British, but he's incorporated some of the best of the other traditions of Europe. And this piece is a 20-minute tone poem, which really does depict spring in England, which can be anything. It can be sunny, it can be rainy, it can be warm, it can be cold. It's, you know, England's a disaster with weather, but he manages to put all of it in it. But you end with a feeling of arrival. It's very, very beautiful. You have bells ringing, you have beautiful, clean, bright harmonies, and at the end of the piece, for the first time, a true melody, a true theme. Because what he, in a sense, does when he constructs this tone poem is he takes this idea from the end and he begins the work by deconstructing it. So you hear flashes of it here and there, and then the arrival point of the work is the theme. And of course, before that, we have his student, Benjamin Britten, who is, I think, considered by most people the greatest of the modern, or from that period, British composers. I think there was a spell after Elgar where on the international stage British music wasn't as well represented. I mean, we Brits are very proud of all the other composers that came around that time, but from an international point of view, Britten was the first one to really make a mark again. And this simple symphony was written when he was very young indeed, and in fact he himself quotes music that he wrote when he was even younger. So in the slow movement he quotes from, I think, Opus 2 or something like that, a piano piece he wrote. And I've had the joy of doing this piece many times. When I was studying, I started a chamber orchestra with my friends at college in Germany. And this piece, the Simple Symphony, Elgar Serenade for Strings, Grieg's Holberg Suite, they're things that people who do a lot with string orchestras always know. And it's always tricky, but it's always great fun. And it's in 4 movements. The first one, they all have fun names like Boisterous Bourrée or Frolicsome Finale and stuff like that. Sentimental Saraband. But again, we start off with a robust, very rhythmic first movement. And I think one of the things that defines this piece is how compact it is. He already shows his skill for using material very efficiently, switching things upside down, inverting them, putting through all the parts. You know, you can see in the young Britten this very clear and vivid mind. And we have a pizzicato polka. No, not a polka. A playful pizzicato, excuse me, is the second movement, which is incredibly tricky for the strings. They put down their bows and they go ta 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 like this, and it always ends up with people in spasms needing massages at the end of the rehearsal. And then the core of the piece is this gorgeous third movement, the Sentimental Saraband, which is truly deep music. It's beautiful music, and I would say is the greatest movement of quality in what is otherwise a very high quality piece. And it ends up with a fast, dangerous fugue, which only lasts 3 or 4 minutes. The whole piece is only a quarter of an hour, I would guess, but it's great fun. And we just finished our first day of rehearsals, and I can say it's an incredibly mixed program. An incredibly unusual program, actually. A lot of these works are not performed regularly in the concert hall, so I'm excited.